Good afternoon, boys and girls, and how are you today?
Good.
I'm so glad you could come to story time. You know, it's fall, isn't it? And one of the things that we find in the fall are the apples that are ready to come from the trees. There's all kinds of things that you can do with apples from the trees, aren't there? Like what? What can we do with apples? Fred.
Caramel apples.
Caramel apples. Cynthia.
Apple juice.
Apple juice. Okay, Tatiana.
Apple pie.
Apple pie. Adam.
Apple cider.
Apple cider. Brandy.
Apple turnovers.
Apple turnovers. Ernie.
Apple muffins.
Apple muffins. James.
Just a plain old apple.
Just a plain old apple. Brandon. Is that what you were going to say? Anything else? Justin?
Apple slices.
Apple slices? Crystal?
Upside down cake.
Apple upside down cake?
You can juggle apples.
You can juggle apples. What else can we do with eating apples? Megan?
Candy apples.
Candy apples. Cynthia?
Caramel.
Caramel. And one more. Justin?
Apple chips.
Apple chips. Oh, that's good. Well, you know what? There's a man in this book that likes pears just as much as you all like apples. And this man's name is Mr. Putter. And he has a cat named Tabby. And it's called Mr. Putter and Tabby Pick the Pears. I'm wondering if we can find out as many things to do with pears as they do with apples. The story is written by Cynthia Rylant, and it's illustrated by Arthur Howard. Would you like to hear it?
Yeah.
Okay. It has 4 chapters. And chapter 1 is called Pear Jelly. It was fall, and juicy things were growing in Mr. Putter's backyard. Juicy apples, juicy tomatoes, and juicy pears. Mr. Putter walked with his fine cat, Tabby. Among the juicy things he dreamed of apple pies and apple turnovers. He dreamed of hot apple cider with cinnamon sticks and stuffed red tomatoes. Does that sound good? Yeah. But most of all, he dreamed of pear jelly. Mr. Putter loved pear jelly. He loved it ever since he was a boy. Fall was his favorite season because of pear jelly. And now it was time. Tabby, said Mr. Putter, it's time to pick the pears. Tabby loved it when Mr. Putter said it was time to do something. She was old, but she still liked excitement. She followed Mr. Putter into the garage, where he found a ladder for pear picking. Then they went to the backyard, where all the excitement was. Chapter 2, Cranky Legs. Mr. Putter had a problem. It was a ladder problem. Mr. Putter set his ladder against the pear tree, but he couldn't get up the ladder. Last year he got up the ladder, but this year he had cranky legs. Cranky legs, cranky knees, and cranky feet. See, he was getting a little older. He stepped onto the ladder, and his legs were so cranky he had to get right off again. One trouble with being old, said Mr. Putter, is being cranky. Tabby knew what he meant. She had a cranky tail. Some days it was so cranky it wouldn't swish, it would just stick up in the air like a stick. Cranky legs and cranky tails are no fun when you're old, especially if you want some pear jelly. Mr. Putter looked at the pears still in his tree, and he thought. He thought and he thought and he thought. Tabby curled herself up and waited. She liked excitement, but she could wait for it. Chapter 3. It's called Zing. What I need, said Mr. Putter at last, is a good slingshot. Mr. Putter knew all about slingshots. He played with them as a boy. They were good for knocking cans off logs. So they must be good for knocking pears off trees. Tabby followed him into the house to make a slingshot. Wait till you see what he uses to make a slingshot. Mr. Putter found an old pair of underwear that he didn't like. He didn't like it because it was covered with poodles. Poodles on his underwear. Can you believe it? His brother had given him the underwear for his birthday. His brother loved the underwear. He thought it was funny. But Mr. Putter did not. So he cut up the underwear and got some very good elastic. And then he got an old glove. And then he got a stick. And he made his slingshot with underwear. Mr. Putter and Tabby went back to the pear tree. Mr. Putter needed something hard and round to sling. Many of his apples had already fallen, so he picked up an apple. He put the apple into the slingshot, and he aimed that apple right at the pear tree, and he pulled back as hard as he could. Zing! The round, hard apple went flying up, 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 over Mr. Putter's pear tree, over Mr. Putter's apple tree, over Mr. Putter's chimney, over Mr. Putter's house. Mr. Putter and Tabby watched as it flew out of sight. Said Mr. Putter, and he picked up another apple. Zing! Up, 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 over, 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 out of sight. Wow, said Mr. Putter. He was smiling. He might have had cranky legs, but he sure had jiffy hands, so he picked up another apple. Zing! And another apple. Zing! Another. Zing! He forgot all about the pears. Tabby liked the first zings, but by the seventh zing, she started to yawn, and by the 10th zing, she started to nod. By the 14th zing, she was fast asleep. Excuse me. Mr. Putter played with his slingshot all afternoon. He played through tea time. He played through supper time. He played until dark, when he couldn't see the apples go up anymore. And when he was finished, he had no apples and no pear jelly. He was a little embarrassed, so he picked up Tabby and he sneaked inside. Chapter 4, Juicy Days. Well, the next afternoon, Mr. Putter and Tabby were sitting on their porch. They were feeling sorry for themselves because they still didn't have what?
Pear jelly.
They still didn't have any pear jelly, you're right. Well, suddenly, Mr. Putter's neighbor, Mrs. Teaberry, and her good dog Zeke came by. Mrs. Teaberry was carrying a big basket, a very big basket. She said to Mr. Putter, "It's amazing, you know. When I woke up this morning, there were dozens of apples in my front yard, and I don't even own an apple tree." Where did they come from? Megan?
They came from they were his the ones that
The slingshot. We're zinging him over there to her yard, right? Well, Mr. Putter looked at Tabby. "Amazing," he said. "So I made an apple feast," said Mrs. Teaberry. And in the basket, she had 14 apple turnovers, 5 apple pies, 6 apple jellies, and a gallon of hot apple cider with cinnamon sticks. Well, Mr. Putter and Tabby ate juicy things for days and days, and when he was finishing the last apple pie, Mr. Putter had an idea about those pears still on his pear tree. He would wait for them all to fall off, and then he would get his slingshot and start singing. And that's the end. What do you think will happen if all those pears go back into his neighbor's yard? Ernie, what do you think will happen?
You'll make pear.
Pear what? What do you think, Fred?
She'll make pear everything.
Pear everything, and that's even better than pear jelly, isn't it? So thank you for being such good listeners at Story Corner today. Hi, boys and girls. We're back to Storybook Corner. And today's story that I have for you is about a very special friendship. How many of you have a best friend? Yeah? Okay, now I have another question. How many of you have a best friend that's an aunt that's very, very much older than you? Really? You have an aunt that's very, very much older than you, and she's your best friend? What's her name?
Aunt Jitter, but her real name is Virginia. We just call her that because when she was a little girl, she couldn't stay still at the table.
Okay. All right. Aunt Jitter. Fred's favorite aunt is Aunt Jitter. Well, this is a story about Aunt May. And it was written by Judith Byron Schnackner, and she also wrote the pictures. And it has a special holiday surprise at the end, so I hope you enjoy it. Are you ready? Mm-hmm. Okay. My great Aunt May lived her whole life in a small white cottage by some very tall pine trees. It was a long trip from our house to hers, so we only got to visit her twice a year, once in the summertime and once at Christmas. I loved May very much. May lived alone in her house with her bird Willy. Willy was small and yellow, and more often than not could be found sitting on the top of May's fuzzy gray hair. May was small and bony, with quick, sparkly eyes. She looked very much like a bird herself, flitting about the house in her flowery dress. May never had any children of her own, so Willy became her own very special fellow, and I was her very special girl. Willy loved May more than anyone, but he was always excited to see me also. When I walked through May's front door, Willy zoomed to the top of my head. He trilled a cheerful tune in hope of receiving an egg biscuit from my hand. But Willy wasn't always so polite. May's heart was big as a full moon, and every stray animal that happened along was attracted to its light. Dogs, cats, raccoons, squirrels, May fed them all. Willy just turned his back on the scruffy crew and stuck an indignant beak into the air. A little jealous, don't you think? Mm-hmm. On summer mornings, May loved to take Willy for walks. During my visits, I would join them. Everybody in town knew the lady with the bird on her head. They were practically famous. Mr. Carlos, the grocer, always had a cracker for the little bird. Mrs. Larson, the baker, made canary cookies sprinkled with yellow sugar. May always brought dozens of them and passed them out to the children we met. People pointed and waved to us. Willy and I loved all the attention. May always took her butterfly net with her, just in case a stiff wind blew Willy off her hat. She let me carry it when we went into town. One day, Willy missed the net and landed in Mrs. Harvey's pocketbook. He was returned to us after Mrs. Harvey found him chirping in her change purse. May gently removed Willy from the nickels and dimes, and she and I both gave a sigh of relief. After our walks, it was nice to come home again. I would fill 2 glasses with cold lemonade, while May put cucumber sandwiches on china plates. We'd sink into the old couch and watch Willy perform. The door to Willy's cage was always open. He was free to fly everywhere because May knew he would never fly away. Sometimes he swooped loppity-loops over our heads, and once he flew straight into a wall. May made an ice pack and tenderly placed it on his tiny head. Then he was fine. Saturdays were for baking. The smell of spices filled the old kitchen. May taught me how to make the best apple pies. She would put her hands on mine and we'd roll out the fine crust and carefully place the dough on a mountain of apples. Then we would let Willy dance all over the top, pressing his birdie feet into the soft dough. And on Sunday, we ate the goodies. Can you see the bird prints on the top of the pie crust? Singing after supper is good for one's digestion, May always said. So she put a record on the old Victrola, and we'd sing along while we did the dishes. Willy would ride the records around and around, chirping and spinning until he became so dizzy he fell headfirst into May's knitting basket. Thank goodness there was a knitting basket there to catch him. On summer afternoons, we went berry picking. May would put on her old straw hat with the papier-mâché cherries. Willy would sit on top, pecking at the make-believe fruit. By the time our baskets were filled to the brim, the sun was hot, and May and I would swim in the pond. Once she kicked off her shoes and walked, still wearing her clothes, straight into the water until she disappeared, leaving Willy and her hat to float on the top. Moments later, she popped up and said, "Care to join me?" as if she had done nothing unusual. Of course, I jumped right in. In the winter, we decorated May's tree. She brought the dusty boxes down from the attic, and I carefully unwrapped and hung old fancy ornaments one by one. Then May handed me a needle and thread to string cranberry and marshmallow garlands. Willy decorated too. He added dust bunnies and lint, lost bobby pins, and birdseed. May would adjust a light or move an icicle. Then it was perfect. I wouldn't have missed that moment for the whole world. And so it went, summer and winter, year after year. But one year, it looked as though I might miss it all. During the summer, Mom became ill. This meant we couldn't visit Willy and May. May didn't drive, and no one could take me on the long trip to her house. Dad said, "Cheer up, Christmas will be here before you know it." And I didn't want to cry in front of Mom, so I went to my room. Feeling pretty sad, huh? I wanted Mom to get better, and I also wanted to see Willy and May. I missed them so much, so we wrote to each other often, filling our letters with hugs and kisses. Willy stamped his inky feet all over the envelopes. See the little footprints? He's dancing across the envelope. By December, Mom was better, but still needed my help at home. I wrote and told May that we couldn't come for Christmas. My tears turned my words into blue petals and made my letter hard to read. But I knew that May would understand. And one very cold week later, the mailman brought a card from May, and it read, "Set a place for Willy and me at your Christmas table. We will bring the plum pudding. Willy sends his chirps. Love, Aunt May." Later, I made paper snowflakes sprinkled with glitter, and Dad went out and bought the biggest Christmas tree he could find. I could hardly wait. May and Willy were really coming. On the day before Christmas, it began to snow. But by late Christmas Eve, the winds blew hard. Snow drifted high up on the empty streets, and the voice on the radio said it was the biggest storm in years. All the trains had stopped. The roads were blocked. I knew that May and Willy would not be able to come. I pressed my nose against the frozen window and cried and cried and cried until I fell asleep right where I was. It was almost dawn when I woke up, cramped with cold. From outside, I could hear a muffled sound of bells and a man's laughter. And when I looked down into the frozen snow, I saw not a man, but an old woman with a bird on her head. I flew downstairs as May peeked around the front door. The wind blew Willy in over my head, and I spun around to watch him somersault through the air. May followed us into the hallway where she set down Willy's cage in the plum pudding, and she stamped the snow off of her feet. So she took off her boots and she set them side by side on the rug. Then she moved to the fireplace and wriggled her toes in front of the fire. "Well, now, this is real cozy," she said, and sat down. "How did you get here?" I asked in astonishment. "Oh," May said calmly, "the dearest old fellow, all twinkly with bells and smelling of balsam, offered us a ride." "A ride?" I asked. My eyes grew wider. Willy darted to May's head and peeked over her curls. "Oh, yes," May continued. "His sleigh was overflowing with packages, so we had to squeeze in, but he didn't seem to mind. He just laughed and laughed." "Who was he?" I asked. May cocked her head to one side in puzzlement. "I know he must have told me, but now that's just not like me," she said. "I can't remember his name." Then she chuckled and hugged me close. She bent her head down to mine, and Willy flew back to the tree. And he stayed there most of Christmas Day, picking at the popcorn garlands and admiring his reflection in the Christmas balls. The end. Who do you think that was that brought May?
Santa Claus.
Santa Claus. Isn't that funny? And that's the story of a very special friendship and a very special holiday surprise. Thanks for being here today.